After Moses' successor, Joshua, passed away, he was followed by a series of Jewish leaders known as the Judges. The period of the Judges lasted for approximately 350 years, from 2516 till 2871. Samson was said to be the seventh judge and ruled his people for 20 years. The story of Samson is recorded in the book of Judges, chapter 13 to 16, and although little is recorded regarding his role leading the Jews, the verses recount many stories of his great strength and his various skirmishes with the Philistines. Note that the Philistines have no connection to the current-day Palestinians. From the tribe of Dan, Samson was born to his parents, Manoah and Zilphonis, in their old age, after they had been childless for many years. One day, in the small town of Zorah, an angel appeared to them and declared the Zilphinos would give birth to a son who would grow up to save the Jews from the marauding Philistines. The angel told the couple that the boy was special, and that from his birth he was to be dedicated to God as a Nazirite for his entire life. He was not to consume any wine or grapefruit by product, and no razor was to ever touch his hair. In due course, Zilphonis conceived and gave birth. She named him Shimshon, called as Samson. His name foreshadowed the man he would become, a mighty son who would shield and protect his people. Even in his early youth, Samson displayed remarkable physical strength. One day, as he was wandered through the woods, a lion pounced on him. Feeling the Spirit of God resting upon him and strengthening him, Samson slew the lion with his bare hands, realizing that he had been endowed with the strength in order to help his people. The Philistines were a nation of marauders living in the west of the Holy Land. They were constantly harassing and pillaging the Jews. For 40 years, the Jews suffered terribly under the heavy Philistine hand, until finally Samson took a stand. Samson was too modest to undertake leadership of a Jewish army. He also did not want to provoke the Philistines into further terrorization of his Jewish brethren. He decided that he would avenge them himself by engaging in personal conflicts, intimidating them and preventing them from harassing the Jews. He began seeking ways to get into close contact with the Philistines. The first occasion for him to confront the Philistines arrived when one day, on one of his frequent roaming expeditions, he arrived in Timnah, a Philistine village. There he saw a Philistine maiden whom he decided to take as a wife. Although his parents attempted to dissuade him, Samson resolved to marry her. At the wedding feast, Samson saw an opportunity to put his plan into action. He challenged 30 Philistine guests to answer a riddle he would pose to them. If they could guess the answer, he would give them each a suit of clothes, and if they could not, they would give him 30 suits. The Philistines agreed. Samson presented his riddle, and the Philistines were unable to answer it. On his way to Timnah, Samson had passed the spot where he slew the lion, and he noticed that a swarm of bees had turned the carcasses into their hive. Samson scooped out some honey, ate, and went on his way. As a result, he posed the following riddle: "From the eater come out food, and out of strong came out sweetness. What is it?" The eater refers to a lion, the predator of all predators, and the sweetness refers to honey. Requesting a few days to come up with the answer, the Philistine approached Samson's bride. They demanded that she coax the answer from her husband and deliver it to them, or they would burn down her father's house. Samson's wife pressured her husband to tell her the answer to the riddle, so he did. When the Philistine came to Samson and presented the answer, he understood at once what had transpired. Leaving the city in anger, Samson went to Ashkelon, another Philistine town, and killed 30 Philistines. Then he stripped them and sent their robes to the men who had won the wager. Samson returned to Timnah for his wife, but in his absence, she had been given to another man. When he confronted his father-in-law, he offered Samson a younger sister instead. Samson grew incensed to discover that not even one person had protested the scandalous act. It was the time of the wheat harvest, so Samson rushed into the fields and caught 300 foxes. He tied them in pairs and placed burning torches in their tails. Then he let them loose, and they ran in all directions, setting the crops ablaze. In addition to avenging his own grievance, he did this to teach the Philistines a lesson for their frequent pillaging of the land of Israel. Samson's downfall ultimately came at the hands of another Philistine convert he married, Delilah. One day, the Philistines' lord came to Delilah and offered her great wealth if she were to discover the secret to her husband's strength. If she would aid them in capturing him, they would reward her handsomely. Delilah agreed. Every day, Delilah would torment her husband, trying to lure his secret from him. A few times, Samson gave her made-up explanations, but Delilah was relentless. So finally Samson told her the secret of his strength. A razor has never come upon my head, for I am a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like a man. This time, the treacherous Delilah knew that Samson was telling her the truth. She hastened to summon the Philistine lords to her house. While Samson was asleep, one of the men cut his locks off, and Delilah cried, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." Samson jumped up prepared to defend himself, but the divine strength he had possessed had departed from him, and the man who lay in wait easily overcame him. The heartless Philistine hurt out his eyes and led him to the Gaza in chains. Gathered in the great hall in Gaza, the Philistine made a great feast to celebrate their victory over Samson. They sang and danced and gave thanks to their gods for delivering him into his hands. Then they sent for his blind Samson to entertain them. Tormented and cruelly humiliated, he could not bear their rude jest and idol worship. Turning to his guide, he said, "Lead me to the pillars, so that I may lean upon them and rest for a minute." Soon after he was moved there, Samson, afire with anger and pain, prayed to God, "Let me avenge myself on this cruel Philistine, that they may know that you are the only God. It matters not if I die with them." Suddenly he once again felt the Spirit of God in him. Samson stretched forth his hands, tearing down the pillars, supporting the building. The next instant, the walls and the roof came crashing down, destroying the entire building. Every single Philistine, together with Samson himself, was killed in the great crash. That day, Samson killed more Philistines than he had throughout his entire life. Later his body was brought home, and he was buried on the land he had fought so valiantly to defend. It was said that Samson was the acknowledged judge of the people of Israel for 20 years. Thanks for watching. If you like to see more Christian content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.